was Mishna Beis. Okay, so we talked about him. If he's a king from the Maccabeans or the Herodian kings, we cannot judge them because we don't trust them to be fair. For them to be judges or be judged, we don't do chalitza. It's not respectful to do chalitza, or for them to do yibum. You can't marry their wives. And we had the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda that another king is allowed to marry the widow of the previous king. Okay, when a relative of his dies, he doesn't go to the funeral. According to Rabbi Yehuda, he's allowed to, like you see that David did, but the Gemara Mishnah said that David did that only because of a very special circumstance. He wanted to make it clear that he had nothing to do with the assassination of Avner, and that's why he went to the funeral, where usually the king doesn't go to the funeral. Okay? When he mourns, he sits on a low platform, as opposed to a stool, which the Kohen sits on, and certainly doesn't sit on the floor like regular people do when they're mourning. Mishna Daled, Umaitzi lemilchemes harishus al pi beistin shel shivim ve'echad. Motzi means to take out, like hamotzi lechem min haaretz, he who takes out bread from the ground. That's the breath thing we say when we eat bread. So lahotzi means to take out. He takes out. The king has the permission to take out to a war. Means the king's right. We're talking about now some of the king's rights. The previous mission were his restrictions, things he can do, he can't do. The king's right. The king has the right to take his subjects out to war, even if it's not a war which is a mitzvah. Which wars are mitzvahs? The war to conquer.
Defending.
A defensive war, right? If we're being attacked. There's another war which is a mitzvah. War against
hostages.
Well, okay, that's the same thing. Okay, right, same idea. Right. Amalek, to destroy Amalek. The war to conquer the land of Israel, right, from the Canaanites. Okay, so those are wars which are obligatory wars which are a mitzvah, right? There's wars which are none of those. If the king wants to expand his territory, because you've all played Catan, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you want to become win the game, you have to settle. No, you don't. So in Catan they just settle it, right? But the real way you do it, because they're Vikings, aren't they? Right? They go out and conquer unknown lands, Iceland, Greenland, or whatever it is. Okay, so that's what the king has the prerogative to do that, even though it's putting his people's lives at risk. Obviously, if you go out to war, there's people's lives at risk. So does the king have the right to do that? I mean, does a Jewish have the king have the right to go to war to expand his property? I mean, all people do it. They did in the ancient world, right? Today, the United Nations doesn't let you do it, right? but it was something that everybody did, right? Until they wrote their charter. People just didn't have to have a reason to go to war. You went to war because you want to conquer the neighbor and have his oil fields, right? So the Torah allows kings to do that, apparently. The question of him is, even though you're putting other people's lives at risk, that's the right of the king to do that. I mean, it has to be a reason. You can't just do it for no reason, and that's why you can only do it if you have permission from the Sanhedrin. Right, because the Sanhedrin weigh up what are your gains, what are your losses. Okay, the fight with the financial gains because lives at risk. Is it really worth? How many people are going to get? How many people do you reckon will die in battle? How much will the rest of the country gain from it?
Did this ever happen in history?
I think David Melech did wars like that.
But land outside of Israel.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, already before David Melech, most of Israel was conquered, and he conquered areas which were not part of the biblical borders, all the way to the Euphrates he conquered. So it could be there is some places it's mentioned the Euphrates as being one of the borders of Israel, but I don't think he conquered Syria, which is not part of Israel. So that seems to be acceptable, but you have to weigh up. Is it worthwhile? Are the gains worth the losses? So he doesn't make. Obviously he makes that decision, but then he has to go get the agreement of the Sanhedrin. But that's not the point of it. The point of the Mishnah say is the king has the right to do this. It says, I'll be based in Shemlech, he must have the authority from the Sanhedrin of the 70, the highest Sanhedrin, to agree to do it. But the basic point is he has the right to do this, even though he's putting other people's lives at risk. Another thing he has the right to do. Upayret lasos loy geder. No, derech. Poretz means to make a breach. If the king needs to build a road, you with me?
Yeah.
Right? Poretz means to make a breach. The king is allowed to make a break through your field. You have private property, but the king needs to build a road, and to go around your property would make the road, much more expensive. It's much quicker for everybody to have the road go through your land. So they have a thing like that in secular courts called compulsory purchase, right? Right, which means that that's how it's in England as well. I know there's one place where the guy refused to move, and eventually they built the motorway on both sides of his house.
Oh yeah,
right.
I saw
and
that.
now what happened was the guy's now got a house in the middle, which he got no access to anywhere, because they didn't build roads from his house to the motorway.
What?
This guy's. Why should we be nice to him? This guy cost the country another $100 million to build the road on two sides of the motorway around it, instead of going straight through his house. So now he's stuck there in a house with no access to the motorway.
How does he leave?
I don't know, it's his problem. Maybe he walks and hitches, I don't know. But he doesn't, I don't know, he probably...
That'd be so noisy.
He probably gave up the house, whatever. But that's okay, so by Jewish law, we don't care, we just say, look, I suppose we compensate him, but the king has the right to do this. Poretz law, he can make a breach, means to make a breach means to break through somebody else's property. Lasos lo derech, to make for himself a road. Now, what's the purpose of this road? Kings don't need roads. I do, right? But the purpose of the king's roads are for the country. The country needs roads. He needs roads for his army, like the Romans built roads. So he's allowed to do this.
Sounds
like
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Why?
Have you watched it?
I used to listen to it at 11:30 at night after Today in Parliament.
It's the whole the beginning of it is his house is going to get destroyed because they're building a motorway. And it's like, what? But then, like, literally minutes later, the earth gets blown up because they're building a motorway through the earth.
Okay. No one can object. Limchot means to make a protest. No one has the right to protest against the king's right to build roads through their private property. Obviously, it has to be done with thought and consideration. It could be the king has to pay you for it if it's yours, but you can't stop it, right? Even though it's private property, that's for the good of the people. The king has the right to do this. Okay. Derech HaMelech ein lo shiur, and there's no limit for the king's road. Derech means the king's road. Ein lo shiur, it doesn't say it has to be 5 feet wide, 6 feet wide. Whatever the king feels he needs to transport his armies from one side of the country to the other quickly, to take tanks down, it has to be big enough for his army units. Okay. So it's another right of the king, not only to make roads through your property, also to build roads as wide as he feels is necessary. V'chol ha'am bozezim, all the people take booty. Booty is what you take in war. So, v'noistin the fonav, and they place it in front of him. V'hu noitel chelek b'rosh, and he takes the first choice. The word rosh here means a head, in the sense he's first. Chelek is a portion. So what happens is you go to war, and then all the booty, it's not private, the booty, it doesn't belong to the particular soldier. The soldier's fighting on behalf of the country, which is on behalf of the people, on behalf of the king. So everything that's captured in war is placed in one big thing together. The king has the right to take first choice. And then it's divided amongst the soldiers, not just the soldiers, amongst it's also given to the people who stay behind to look after the country, the people who are who keeping the country going. Everyone is I learned that in last week's parasha. When Avraham Avinu last week's parasha. Avraham Avinu went to fight the 4 kings against the 5 kings, and then Lot was captured, and Avraham Avinu went to chase after them, and he said that he wanted to, when Avraham said, you can keep all. The king of Sodom said, can you remember the story? The king of Sodom says to Avraham, give him back the people, you can keep all the booty. So Avraham says, no, I don't need it. I don't want you to say you made Avraham rich. Except that which the people who helped me fight are entitled to. What they're entitled to, I can't I can't give that away at their expense. So the people who help me, both those who help me fight and those who stay behind to look after the things at home, they're all entitled to their equal share in the booty.
This was in the Parsha.
Last week's parasha. And Avraham Avinu went to battle against the 5 kings, right? He went to battle against the 4 kings. The 4 kings beat the 5 kings, and then the 4 kings captured Lot, and Avraham Avinu chased after the 4 kings to recapture Lot. And then he took all the booty, and he gave it all back to the king of Sodom. Except for the bits that the soldiers were entitled. All the soldiers who helped him, I don't need anything, keep it all. But I can't do that. They're entitled to part of what they won in war. And therefore that's why you can't give it. Okay, so the Mishnah says the king is the one who has the first right to take from the booty. Okay, now some of his prohibitions. Lo yarbe lo nashim. He may not have a lot of wives. As explicit in the Torah, Devarim Yud Zayin. Let's see what it says.
If the king cannot have a lot of wives?
King can have a lot of wives. The question is, what's a lot? Okay, Shlomo Melech didn't have Erev. Just because Shlomo Melech did it doesn't mean it's right.
Really? Because I heard a different...
But no, we assume that what Shlomo Melech did is right until the Torah points out that was one of his mistakes. Understand?
Where's the Torah point out that was one of his mistakes?
It says...
Because he thought he was the wisest person.
Right, it says his wife turns his heart away from God.
Oh.
So it's clearly saying that this was wrong. Let's read it.
I heard a Hasidic pshat from, there's this big Rebbe that comes here in every Yom Iyun.
Yeah.
And he said that each wife a person has is a compliment to his neshama. So Shlomo Melech must have needed so many compliments to his neshama.
Could be. It could be. That's why he did it. It doesn't mean it was okay.
Okay.
All you're saying is explaining why would a man who's so wise do that? Is it just he was just sex mad? Is that why he had so many wives? And now this Rebbe is saying, no, he wasn't doing that. He was complimenting his neshama, right?
Yeah.
So he had a good reason for it, but reasons don't justify. The ends doesn't justify.
Yeah, I thought it was also about like making alliances.
That could also be right. He has a political sense. Each of those explains. It explains it. It doesn't justify it. Okay, so this is what it says over here. When you come to the land that Hashem your God gives you, possess it and settle it, and you will say, I will set a king over myself, like all the nations that are around me. You shall surely set over yourself a king whom Hashem your God shall choose. From among your brethren shall you set a king. The first point, he has to be Jewish. You can't have a non-Jewish king over. You cannot place over yourself a foreign man who is not your brother. So it's not just, there are certain limitations on Gerim as well. It's not just, the Torah is not just saying it has to be Jewish, it also has to have Jewish parents. And detail, I'm not sure exactly how it is. It's a Jewish mother, a Jewish father, whatever. So there's certain limitations on that. Like for example, Hodas's grandchildren, one of them was Frum. And the story says in Chazal that when he came to the Beis HaMikdash to read every 7 years, the Hakel ceremony, the king reads the book of Devarim. And when he got to this pasuk, he started to cry because he knew that he isn't really fit to be king because he doesn't really fit the criteria. And the other people said, "No, it's okay, it's fine." And then Chazal said, at that point, God got really annoyed and decided to destroy the temple because the people were saying, like publicly declaring the opposite of the halacha. The halacha is this king wasn't fine. But we accepted him because he was the most powerful, he was the one of connection with the Romans, and so we accepted the situation. But to make out as if it's okay, when it's not okay, was a serious crime. Okay? So it continues like this. Only, these are his restrictions, he shall not have too many horses for himself, so that he will not return the people to Egypt, because Egypt in biblical time was the center of the horse trade. And he shall not have too many wives, so that his heart not turn astray, and he shall not greatly increase silver and gold for himself. It shall be that when he sits on the throne of his kingdom, he shall write for himself 2 copies of this Torah in the book, from before the Kohen Levite. It shall be with him, and he shall read from it all the days of his life, so that he will learn to fear Hashem, his God, to observe all the words of the Torah and these decrees to perform them. So that his heart not become haughty over his brethren, and not turn from the commandments right or left, so that he will prolong years over the kingdom, he and his sons amid Israel. So it's very clear, his limitations, his restrictions. There's no limitations on you and me. I can have as many wives as I want. Right? So can you, as many 100 ones, 2,000, as many as you want, as long as you afford it, right? You've got time for them all, that's okay. The only restrictions are on a king. I can make as much money as I want as well. I have as many as horses as I want.
Well, I thought there was
the Torah only makes restrictions on the.
Well, I thought there was a whole thing about monogamy in Torah. Like,
What about it?
I thought that you could only have one wife.
Not true. Absolutely not true. As many as you want. It's not advisable, right? There's lots of things not advisable. It's not advisable to drink Coca-Cola either. You're allowed to if you want, right? There's no prohibition of drinking Coca-Cola, but it's not good for you. Nor chocolate cake. Lots of things are not good for you, but the Torah doesn't forbid them, right? But you can have as many as you want.
Isn't there a whole thing about like
Nowadays, the Ashkenazi custom is not to have more than one wife because there's a ban on it. There was a great rabbi called Rabbeinu Gershom in the 9th century, I think. Yeah, then in the 9th century, it's like over 1,000 years ago, he banned Ashkenazi communities from having more than one wife. That's why we don't do it anymore. And Sephardim also can't because they write it in the Ksuva. In the Ksuva, it says, I agree not to take any other wife without my wife's permission.
Why don't we just erase that?
No, you just
get a custom ketubah.
Because Ksuvas are obligatory even if you don't write them. It doesn't help to erase it.
Could you have a different type of ketubah? Like a ketubah that doesn't
It
have
doesn't say that in line?
Yeah.
Yes, if you come from such a community. You can't write your own. You're subject to your community. Anyway, if she agrees, I know my sister-in-law's brother-in-law. My brother's wife, sister's husband.
Okay.
Right? I said, but his mother, his father had 2 wives. His father was from Afghanistan, and he had one wife who only gave him birth girls, and he decided to take another wife to give him a son, because in those days they thought that he depended on the wife. Right? Henry VIII thought the same, because he had so many wives, because he was expecting one of them to give him a boy, none of them did. And he took a second wife, and she gave birth to this. He's not alive anymore, this guy. I remember his mother, and when he was born, his mother brought him over to the older wife, the first wife, right? And says, like, here is our prince, we'll bring him up together. It was all one happy family. He was their son. Get it? The Torah does not forbid more than having one wife, although it's not advised. It's certainly not customary. I don't know anyone who's got more than Baba Sali had more than one wife. Yeah. So it is permitted. It's not permitted by Israeli law. It's just illegal by Israeli law. Unless you're Arabs. Arabs are allowed to have more than one.
Wait, Israeli law, like secular. Like, you just don't get the marriage license, but you could still have like 2 women, like they're basically wives.
Well, you can have a prostitute if you want. By Israeli law, you're not allowed to have 2 wives.
It's illegal, or they just don't?
It's illegal.
They just, what would they give you a fine or something?
I don't know. Put you in prison.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, you're not allowed to have more than one wife. I mean, you can live with someone else and live with that. What you say? She's not my wife.
Yeah.
She's not my wife. But if you want to claim family allowance, right, from Bituach Lomi, right, you can't. You don't have to get more for more than one wife. Understand? I mean, she may get more because she's single, because she's not. Whatever. Yeah. Arabs are allowed to have more than one wife.
It's crazy how they allow that.
Because you want to have a.
No, another. What's it called?
No, you don't have another reason for them to get annoyed.
Intifada, another intifada.
Exactly. Okay, anyway, the point is, it says like this. Let's read it together. Lo yarba lo yalosh. You mustn't have lots of wives. But the problem is, what's called a lot? I mean, what would you think is a lot of wives, Dylan? 4, 5. You know, Jacob thinks 10. Like, everyone's got their own concepts of what does mean a lot, right? What's called a lot? How are we supposed to know? Obviously, Moshe Rabbeinu must have explained to the people listening to this what a lot means. A lot means more than 2, more than 3. Everyone's got their own version. It must have been some part of Torah Shabbal Peh. The oral didn't explain it. But now it's vague, and there's 3 opinions in our Mishnah. What exactly are the? Everybody agrees there's some magic number called 18. Everybody agrees on that. 18 somehow plays a role, and the source of this is because when King David was getting it over the head from the prophet for his affair with Bathsheba, right, which we're not going to at the moment what the story was, what exactly the story was, but he got it over the head, and the prophet said to him in the name of God, I have given you, we mentioned it yesterday, the house of your master, the wives of your master, or the daughters of your master, and if this is not enough, then I will give you like these and like these. That's what he says. Which means, if the wives that you have already isn't enough for you, you can have the same number again and again. So it's clear from that prophecy that David was allowed to have 3 times as many wives as he had. right? Because God said if the wives you have isn't enough, you could take another load and another load. So we work out in the text that he already had 6 wives at the time. It says clearly in the story David had 6 wives. So he was allowed to have another 12.
18.
So that's where the number 18 comes from.
That's definitely too much.
Okay?
Definitely.
That's too much?
That's a lot.
Okay. So if you're a king, it's not a big deal, you've got all the money in the world. You don't have time for them, that's true, but whatever. Anyway, that's the rule. A king's allowed to have up to 18 wives, not more. Now, so what's the 3-way debate? The 3-way debate is as follows. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Mar Behulai, you're allowed to have more. Ubulvad shelo yehu mesiros es libo. On condition, ubulvad means just not. Means on condition that they do not turn his heart astray. Now, where does this condition come from? Because that's what the Torah says. The Torah says like this. We'll read it out together. The king, it says, he shall not take too many wives, so that his heart not turn astray. So the Torah gives the reason for not having lots of wives. Now, says Rabbi Yehuda, what type of wife is going to turn your heart astray?
Idol worshipping wife.
Right. A wife who's not very frum. Okay? Is it permitted to marry a woman who's not very frum? It's not very good advice, because she may not take challah from your bread, or she may not go to the mikveh. But let's assume that she agrees, she promises, and you check. She always goes to the mikveh when she's supposed to, and everything she brings in the house is kosher. There's no prohibition to have a non-frum wife.
Yeah, what if you can help her grow?
Whatever. All right. Okay, that's what let's say, right? Okay. So there's no. Now, when I say the word not frum, you can define it however you want, right? But let's say she's really not frum. Really, she doesn't even believe in God, right? She's still Jewish, so there's no prohibition to have her as a wife. The marriage works. There's no prohibition of having sexual relations with a woman just because she doesn't believe in God, as long as she's Jewish, right? So, but if you have lots of wives like that, then the risk of them pushing you away from Yiddishkeit becomes increased by each one. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, the prohibition of not having a lot, which means 18, only means if there's a serious concern that they'll turn your heart away, which means they're not frum. But if you marry wives who are great tzaddikas, great Beis Yaakov girls, who sit and say Tehillim all day, right? And they do chesed and they volunteer for every organization in the community, right? They can manage as many as you want with them, 100, even if you're the king. That's why Rabbi Yehuda learns it, that the restriction on 18 only applies to those who are what we call perutzes. That's what perutzes means, those who are brazen, free. Right? I suppose that's just a word. It doesn't have to mean it's okay. Obviously, you can't marry a woman who's going to clearly whatever. There's no real restrictions, but as long as you're not going to sin, the fact that she sins is their problem. I mean, today you have people sometimes who are in the process of becoming frum, right? And the woman wants to be frum, and the man doesn't want to be frum. They don't have to get divorced, as long as. That way's easier because she'll keep the laws of Taras and Mishpacha, and he'll just have to behave when she's forbidden, right? Yeah. The other one's more problem. Like he wants to become she doesn't want to become frum, right? And he can only sleep with her if she goes to the mikveh. Okay, so it's problematic, but you do get couples like that where they love each other, they met, and it happens to be she's frum and he's not. So what can you do? So there's no prohibition of getting married. So that's the story. Says Rabbi Yehuda, Mar Behulai, he's allowed to increase for himself, on condition that they won't turn his heart away. How can you fulfill that condition? By making sure that they're frum. So if you marry only frum girls, only pious girls, then there's no limit. The Torah's limit of 18 is only, the Torah's prohibition of having a lot is only if there's real suspicion that this will happen because they're not very religious. Good? That's his opinion. Reb Shimon Omer. Sorry. I didn't say the first opinion. Right. There's an opinion before Rabbi Yehuda. Only 18. So that opinion holds 18 across the board. It makes no difference whether they're frum or not frum. 18 is the limit. You want to marry non-frum? Fine. Only 18. Frum ones? No problem. Even better. Still 18. There's no difference between the two. You're allowed to marry 18 either way and not allowed to marry more either way. Rabbi Yehuda says no. If they're frum, then you can have as many as you want, and the limit of 18 is only if they are not frum. Rabbi Shimon Omer, he's the most strict. Afilu achas u'mesiris liboy. Even one girl who's not from Lo Yisa'ena mustn't marry her. The king's not, no, I don't say nobody, the king may not marry a girl who there's a serious consideration that she may turn his heart away. So what is the limit of 18? The limit of 18 is from girls. So there's three opinions. Everyone agrees there's a limit of 18. According to one opinion, the limit of 18 is across board. According to Yehuda, the limit of 18 is only for the non-from ones, but from ones you marry you want. According to Rabbi Shimon, the limit of 18 is only from girls, because non-from girls you're not allowed to marry at all. Okay? So that's the three-way opinion. It's interesting how the Torah Baal Peh has developed. We all know that we all agree that there's a limit of 18. You get it? And we're seeing this possible. We know from the prophet there's a limit of 18. But the question is how to apply that. And it makes sense. Look, these rabbis lived, there was no king. There had been no king for hundreds of years by the time these rabbis discussed this. And even when the kings did do it, they probably didn't marry girls who were not religious, or Shlomo Melech did, right? Now, why did Shlomo Melech do it? Because he thought he was cleverer than the Torah. The Torah says you mustn't do it because they'll turn your heart away. So he reasoned, I'm the cleverest man on earth, right? It says that in the Tanakh. Okay, so no one's going to have the ability to turn my heart. Someone's going to persuade me and prove to me that what I don't want. No, I can, wipe the floor with any contest of a theological contest. No one's going to persuade me. So but it didn't help, because still they managed to draw his heart away, somewhat. So, okay, let's continue. This is what Rabbi Shimon said. Rabbi Shimon Omer says, Afilu achas, even one umesira es libo, who turns his heart away, behold, this one, lo yisena, he shouldn't marry her. Im kain, so lama ne'emar, why did he say, v'lo yarba, he shouldn't have a lot of wives? If you shouldn't marry even one girl who's not from, so why did he say you shouldn't have a lot of wives? Afilu ka'Abigail, even if they're like Abigail, who was one of David's wives, she was herself a prophetess. So even if you got a wife like that, there's a limit of 18.
She was a prophet?
Abigail was, yes.
Oh.
One of the 7 prophetesses, I think. Well, listen to them back here.
Wow, I don't remember that being a detail in her life. I thought she was a Rasha.
Abigail. She was not a Rasha.
She wasn't? I'm thinking of someone else. I think you're Zevel. Izebel. Okay.
She was a Rasha.
Yeah.
Abigail was one who was married to a guy called Novel, and he was very ungrateful to David, and then he died very shortly, and David married his widow, called Abigail. Okay. Okay, next restriction. Right, so the first restriction is the number of wives. Next restriction, lo yarba lo susim. He may not have lots of horses. But it says lo yarba lo susim. He may not make lots of horses for himself. Okay, what does it mean for himself? Ella kedei mirkafto, only what he needs for his chariots. Means what he needs for his army, what he needs to get around. Yeah, that is allowed. But to make a collection, that's the point. Like some people have a collection of cars that they don't ever use, right? 25 Lamborghinis and 34, what do you call them, Rolls Royce. It's a car collection. That's what the king's not allowed to do. But the king needs one Rolls to get around town, or another one in case the first one breaks down. Okay, fine. 2 you can have. Why do you need more than that? When one breaks down, you mend that. If that one breaks down, you mend the other one. You don't need more than that. Okay, that's called indulging. And the risk over here, specifically in horses, was the idea that it attracts. The king then has to have representatives for his interest in his horse trade in Egypt, and that's opening Egypt up to Jews and the Egyptian influence and all the paganism and magic. And they were trying to get away from Egypt, and now they're going back to Egypt, and that's why the Torah forbids it. Okay, next restriction: the kesef v'zahav, silver and gold, lo yarba lo ma'od. He mustn't have a lot. It doesn't say he mustn't have a yarba. Yarba means a lot, but yarba ma'od means exceedingly a lot. It means you want to have, I don't know, we'll see. Also, what's called exceeding a lot depends who you ask. If you ask me, I think having $10,000 in the bank means you've got a lot of money. Ask Bill Gates, he'll say the guy's a pauper, right? Depends who you ask. So what's the definition of a lot? What?
What's a pauper? Pauper. Yeah, what is that?
Prince and the Pauper, you know the book?
No.
Prince and the Pauper means someone who's poor. Very poor.
Pauper is a poor person.
Yeah, but it's spelled P-A-U-P.
Yeah, I read that in Mishnah today.
Okay. Yes. So what's called a lot? So the Mishnah says, Ella kedei litain Afsanya. And that's not a Hebrew word. It means to give to his army what he needs. The money he needs for the upkeep of his expenses. Expenses for the royal expenses, for the country's expenses, for the army's expenses. You have to have money set aside in case there's a war, right? But stashing money just more and more and more, that the king's not allowed to do. What he needs for the upkeep of his country is allowed to do. Okay, so those are the three restrictions. Now what about his mitzvah? Well, he's in one special mitzvah, which is he writes a Sefer Torah just for himself, for him. Lishma, it's written for him, for his name.
Where's this?
The line starts with the word Ella. It's 6 lines before the end, right? Now, every person has a mitzvah to write a Sefer Torah. You know that? It's the last of the 613 commandments in the Torah, is that you should write a Sefer Torah. So why does the king have to write a Sefer Torah? So it means the king has to write a second one. Right? That's why I read it out, the way the Art Scrolls translate it. There's other ways. He shall write for himself 2 copies of this Torah. Right? Why 2 copies? 1 copy like everybody has. Everybody has to write a copy. But he has to write another copy. Now what's the idea? Why does everyone have to write a copy of the Torah? To learn at home. Right? Keep it at home. A nice brand, even if you inherit what you're supposed to write. Because the Sefer Torah is nice, it's new, it's crispy, you want to learn from it, it's not torn and tattered and worn out, dog-eared, right? Your expression?
Dog-eared?
Dog-eared.
Dog-eared, yeah.
Oh yeah, like
yeah. When you painted it like that. Nice. Okay, that's how your Sefer Torah has to be. So you come home and you learn from it. In those days there were no books, no other Torah was written down. The only Torah that was written down was the Sefer Torah. Okay? But the king has to have an extra. Why does the king have to have an extra one? Why isn't one enough? What's the point of having a second one? So the Mishnah says like this. When he goes out to war, he takes it out with him. The king has to have this Sefer Torah wherever he is. Most people go to work, they don't need a Sefer Torah. They go to shul, they don't need a Sefer Torah. They come home, that's when they have the Sefer Torah, so they can learn at home. That's the point. The king, it's so important, the king must be connected with God every moment of the day. So at every spare moment, the king has a Sefer Torah with him to use. So he can open it up whenever. That's why he goes out to war. What's he going to do with the Sefer Torah? There's a lull in the fighting, there's a break where the generals are planning, so he doesn't need to be there. He takes the Sefer Torah, opens it up. Nichnas, when he comes in, Machnis Ima, he brings it in with him. Yoshe Badin, if he sits in court. Now why is the king in court? Didn't we learn that the king doesn't get put on trial? The king can't be a judge. That's only the kings, not of Yehuda. We mentioned yesterday. The king of Yehuda, like David and Shlomo, they're allowed to be judged. It's only the kings of the Maccabees, the kings of the Herodian kings, they weren't allowed to be judged. Regular kings are allowed to be judged, or allowed to be a judge. So the king sitting in judgment, he imai, his Sefer Torah is with him. May save when he goes to eat. May save really means when he lies. It doesn't mean he lies asleep. It means when he's lying on a couch, that's how they used to eat. Lying on a couch. Who he can name though? It's next to him. Why is it connect to him? I think the point is that because he's maybe it means he's actually asleep. I don't think it means he's asleep. And it means he's in a light-hearted mood because he's eating now. That's why he takes it off. Now, what it means Kenegda? What's the difference between Kenegda and Imai? Imai means with him, Kenegda means opposite him. It means all the time he wears it. Like we wear tefillin on this arm. Right? No, you wear this arm.
Yeah.
No, I'm left-handed.
Oh. I'm also left-handed.
Right. So I put mine on this hand.
Yeah, me too.
I'm the other one.
Okay. So you put your tefillin on your left hand. The king used to put his tefillin on his left hand and his Sefer Torah on his right hand.
I thought they go on the same arm. So what is the discussion in the Gemara of where to place it in relation to the tefillin? Because it has to be spaced. I thought. Oh.
So it's like tied to his arm.
Yeah. Over here, there's a question of where there's a place for 2 tefillin.
Yeah.
Over here, right? And then, so he has it tied to his arm so that wherever he is, he can take it off and read and use. So he goes out to war, he goes out to shul, he goes out to judge, wherever he's got it with him. When he's eating, he takes it off and puts it down. And then when he finishes his meal, he puts it back on. Shenema, as it says in the Pasuk, V'hoisa imai, it shall be with him, v'karabai, and he will read from it, kol yemei chayav, all the days of his life. So it's more important because the king is so prone to pride, haughtiness, ego, because he's so powerful, that the risk of his power going to his head is so great. That's why the Torah insists that he becomes an Eved Hashem. And the way is, he has a Musa Sefer, he reads from his Torah the whole time, and that way he's connected with God, and there will diminish the risk of him becoming proud and etc. with bad character traits. Okay? Alright, that's the end of that Mishnah. Next Mishnah is about our restrictions to him. Okay, so we had one Mishnah which had his rights, one Mishnah which described his restrictions, and now we have a Mishnah that writes our restrictions to him, what we're not allowed to do. Mishnah Hey. Ein roishvim al susoi. You're not allowed to ride on his horse. We talked about that's also the reason why you're not allowed to marry his widow. But ein yoshvim al kisoi. You can't sit on his chair, which means his throne. But ein mishtamshim b'sharvito. You can't use his sharvit. What's a sharvit? Scepter. A scepter it?
Yeah.
You know the story in Megillah? When Esther comes to the thing and it says, anyone who comes to the king who hasn't been invited gets killed unless he stretches out his sharvit. Because the king carries a stick, a very fancy thing with a big knob at the end.
Yeah.
That's a scepter.
Oh, scepter.
So one that shows.
So you can't what?
You can't use it.
Oh, okay.
You can't use his scepter.
Which word, scepter?
Sharvit. Sharvito. His scepter. The ein royenois. You see the word? The line starts with the word Yoshvim. Ein Yoshvim al kiso. Ve'en mishtamshim b'sharvito. You can't use his sharvit. Ve'en royenois. You can't see him kishehu mistaper. What does mistaper mean? Any idea? Mistaper.
No idea.
What it was.
And what do you think the root is?
Stiff.
Okay, so you think the root is samach taf peh, but then you have no explanation with the resh at the end. Correct? Come to add a resh at the end.
No idea.
So what do you think? Taf peh resh, but then you have no explanation for the samach. What's the samach doing at the beginning? And mem is not a question. Lots of words have mems at the beginning. Mikdash, migrash, mitpalel. Mem is a prefix, but samach isn't. So we've got a problem. There's too many letters here. You can't have 4 root letters. Samach, taf, pei, resh. So let me tell you something. This is one of these confusing words. Unfortunately, the language is a bit confusing. Do we have a pen around the board? No. No. Okay. So give me a piece of paper. All right. Got one? Yeah. Oh, look at this. I've got as well. I've got a little notebook, but your notebook's a bit bigger.
Let's see.
Okay, let me give you a Hebrew grammar lesson. Every root has 3 letters. Lamed, Beis, Shin. Means? Lavash.
Lavash.
Means to dress. Right? Rachatz. Means to wash. Okay? Let's just use 2 words. Now in Hebrew, to say you do something to yourself, to get yourself dressed, to get yourself washed. So you say, not a yud, it's a taf.
Yeah, the end.
You say mitlabesh, mitrachetz, or hitlabesh, hitrachetz. Okay? The taf is the indication. It's a taf prefix which indicates that it's what's called reflexive. You're doing it to yourself. Okay? That's fine. Only sometimes, for reasons which I'll explain in a second, these 2 letters get changed in order. So the taf appears here instead of here. The reason for that is when the first root letter is a shin, a zayin, a tes, a tzadi, then this is one of the 4 root letters, first root letters. So apparently it's very difficult to say a word with a taf and then a shin. So I'll give you an example.
Tush.
You would say shamar. That means to God. To guard yourself would be mit shamer. Shamar, mit shamer. But to say that, you'd have to make a break here. You'd have to say mit shamer. It's much easier to say mishtamer. It flows better. So that's what happens. Now when you look at that word, you think, what's going on over here? There's 4 root letters. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? Or there's 1, 2, 3, but then what's the shin doing here? What's 1, 2, 3, what's the resh doing here? And the real answer is that this letter is not a root letter. That toph has been moved into the middle, and really the root is shin mem resh, and the toph is got in there because it's a reflexive toph, which should really be beforehand. And there's the same thing over here as well.
It's safer.
Right. The word is that's another one. Samach. Right? Really the root is samach pei resh. But when you want to say this verb to yourself, right, you have to say mis taper. Got it? So these are the root letters, and the toph is added from. Now, sapar is a barber. Sapar is a barber. Now, you think a sefer is a book, and it's true. What's the connection between a book and a barber?
Start with B.
No. I think, although people say I'm superficial for thinking this, that is because le saper means to tell a story, right? If you want, the place where you tell stories is the barber, because they're just sitting there, there's nothing you can do. You've got a guy cutting your hair, what do? You tell him stories.
Oh, really?
That's the place where you're captivated crowd, because you can't do anything. So the barber tells you stories, you tell them, so the place where you hear the stories isn't the barber's.
But the barber also used to be like the doctors. I used to go there for like surgery and stuff.
Really?
Like that, the spiral barber shop.
Oh yeah.
So they
yeah,
represent like the snakes. The snakes have
Double
represent
snap.
health. Yeah,
Yeah,
the type of snakes. They used to. That's where they used to do like literally like operations, like dentist surgery, like crazy stuff there.
Stats come from.
I thought it was a different reason. I thought it was because of Sweeney Todd.
I don't know what that is.
You know what that is? He was a barber in London who also had a butcher shop. And he used to kill his clientele.
You're joking.
This is real. He used to take a razor, slit their necks, and he had a button where the bodies would go into a basement, and then he would turn them into mincemeat and sell it in his butcher shop. Check it out, I don't believe me. His name was Sweeney Todd, and in the basement, in the Hall of Horrors in Madame Tussauds, when I was a kid, I was about 13. But you know Madame Tussauds? It's like the waxworks in London. So in the basement, they have the Hall of Horrors. One of the things they had on display there was this barber shop, and you have this guy with a razor. He's got a guy there, and you see this glee on his face. His back is not him, Sweeney Todd.
Sweeney Todd.
That's
How did they catch him out? Because his clientele in his butcher shop noticed that the meat was a slightly different colour than mincemeat is supposed to look like.
that's insane.
That's what I thought this symbol outside the barbers came from.
Fictional.
It's fiction, it's not real.
Let me see if it's real.
It says here it's fiction.
No, it's not a real person. It's a fictional character originated in the 1840s from some book, a dreadful serial titled The String of Pearls. There are no public records of a real Sweeney Todd existing as a barber on Fleet Street. The story may be inspired by a similar tale of a French baker and hairdresser may have existed, though this is not even definitely proven. The character's legend has persisted and has been adapted many times in literature, theater, and film.
Honestly, I'm very glad that's not real.
It might not be real.
That's the reason why Jews can't go to barbers, goyish barbers.
Right. That's
Take
interesting.
that straight razor that they use for shaving goy faces.
What has an halacha? You're not allowed to go to a goy barber because you don't know what he's got in his hand. It means that you're allowing this goy, right, who you know would be happy if you were dead, and he's got this razor in his hand behind your neck. It says in halacha you're only allowed to go to a goy barber if there's a mirror in the room.
It's funny.
Then you can see what's going on from.
And you have to keep your eyes open constantly. You don't get hair in there.
We used to ask this question in quizzes. 2 things you're not supposed to do separately, but you're allowed to do together. You hear that? So everyone says milk and meat, that's the other way around. Two things you're not allowed to do separately, but you're allowed to do together. What's the answer? The answer is look in the mirror and go to a kosher barber. You're not supposed to look in the mirror because that's the thing that women do. You're not supposed to go to a non-Jewish barber in case he kills you.
You're never meant to look in a mirror.
That's what it says now.
They've got mirrors on the tefillin.
Okay, that's okay. That's okay. Right, you don't see it, right? But you know, it means to groom yourself. You know, like women do this in the mirror.
Oh yeah. They even use tinted windows.
Whatever. So but if you do the two together, it's okay. Because you go to a kosher barber with a mirror, then it's okay. Anyway, the point is that that's a bit of a.
By the way,
I don't know if it applies nowadays. Goyim, you're talking about Roman Goyim used to go every Shabbos afternoon to watch people being eaten to death by lions.
Yeah.
And slaves having to fight to death as gladiators. So they enjoyed watching people die. They got a lot of fun out of it. So it's understandable if one of those guys who pays every Shabbos afternoon to watch people being crucified,
how about these,
right, is getting happy to see you dead too. So then you can't go to a barber like that.
How about an FOB Arab barber who hates Jews? You don't know he's just an Arab. You just walk over there.
Have you ever heard of Salman Rushdie? Never heard the name. This was about 30 years ago. He was an Indian Muslim writer who wrote negatively about Muhammad. And
he drew a cartoon about him, right? And then they had riots. So
he was put on. He was the I don't know. Ayatollah put out what's it called, a death warrant for him, and apparently I looked like him.
Ooh. What's his name?
Salman Rushdie.
Salman Rushdie.
Or Salman Rushdie. Could be Salman with an S. I don't know, my wife thought.
This guy looked like him.
That's what my wife thought. Maybe because he was bald. I don't know.
Maybe
is he still alive?
Maybe there's with a beard, like with the
eyes a little bit, not the eyebrows. Eyebrows are wrong.
The hair is.
So she was really scared. I went to this barber.
They're still
in
alive.
London, this Gosha barber in London. She was really worried about he was going to do me.
He's like blind or something. Half blind.
Anyway, why are we getting off the point? We got about so the question. So it says over here. We were talking about barbers, right? Right. So the word barber is sapar. To have a haircut means when you get yourself barbered. So it's reflexive. So it really should be mit saper. But we don't say mit saper, we say mistaper. So the tof gets put in the middle. That's why you couldn't recognize this word. But it's something you have to, when you're looking for roots of words, you always have to not fall in this trick. If there's a tof in the middle, you have to see, is that really a root letter? Or did it get put in by mistake because it was moved from the front into between root letter number 1 and 2. That's what happens. Okay? It's more complicated sometimes when it's not even a tof. For this word, look at this word.
But it's the same spelling as Sefer.
It's not the same. The root, it is the same spelling as Sefer, but there's a tof in between. You've got a samach pei reish, but between the samach and the pei there's a tof.
Yeah. I'm
right?
just saying.
So let me say, I give you another word. Look at this is even more complicated. The word zaken.
Here.
Or to get old. Zaken is to get old. What's that doing?
It's a camera.
Oh wow. I wondered why you're trying to hear it, but I'm speaking here. Okay, zaken is to get old. Now, when you make yourself old, so you should read mitzaken, right? But we don't do that because again, it's one of these letters that's difficult to say this one after that one. So we swap the order. So when you'd think it would say miztaken, for some reason or other, you don't say that either. What you say is mizdaken. So not only does the tof move, it actually changes into a daled.
No.
So if you see that word,
If
you see that word, you say, 1 second, what's the root? Zayin daled kuf, no. Daled kuf nun, no. Zayin daled kuf nun, very rare to have a Hebrew word with 4 root letters. You have to realize that daled is not a root letter. It's really the tof from the beginning, which has moved into the middle and then become a daled. It's difficult, but you have to get used to it. All right? And there's one other exception, which is when it's tzadi. Tzedek is righteous. So you would expect to say mitzadek is when self-righteous. You make yourself righteous. that becomes, no, you can't do that. So you have to say mitztadek, right? Yes? No. Wrong. It's mitztadek. For some reason, the tof becomes a test. Now, that's even more weird, because a tof and a test sound almost the same. Only to us, because we don't know how to pronounce the difference. But what actually is, that word mitztadek, which means to be self-justify, to make myself righteous, the root is tzadi, daled, kuf, and the test has got nothing to do with it. The test is just a reflexive tof that was moved into the middle and became a test. I think that's the limit. So, these are the root letters. Shin, Samech, Tzadi, Daled, Kuf. Those root letters, the tof moves, but in these, where the root letter is Zayin. The Zayin, it becomes a Daled, and then Tzadi becomes a Tes, as well as moving. Okay? I'm afraid I didn't make the language. There must be a reason for it. God made the language. It must really make sense. Okay? But the major point is to remember that the tof has moved from the beginning. And then the reason for that, I believe, is it's easier to say. Instead of saying mit tzadek, mit shamer, right? You say mishtamer because it flows better. And that's what I was taught in school. That's the reason why it's done, right? So this word, for example, what does it say? Mistaper. Where was it?
What's it about?
We're saying the king can't go to the barber. You can't see him, getting back to the king. You can't watch the king when he's having a haircut. It's not respectful. He's sitting there with his hair uncovered. He's having his haircut.
Hair uncovered.
Well, first of all, his head's uncovered, right? I suppose we're supposed to imagine the king with his crown, sitting as a royal king, kinging. And here he's sitting there with someone's cutting his hair. You're not seeing the king in his best.
Wow.
It's disrespectful. So the ein roen oiseh keshehu mistaper. You're not allowed to see him when he is having a haircut. Mistaper. V'lo keshehu aram, and not when he is naked. Now, why would the king be naked? I don't know why.
Bathhouse.
Exactly. V'lo bebeis hamerchatz, and not in the bathhouse. Now that sounds like two separate things, right? Means it could be you're not allowed to watch the king in the bathhouse even if he's not naked. Let's say sometimes they sit in the bathhouse with a towel. They sit on the steps going down to the mikveh, and everyone is schmoozing the mikveh news, right? Right. So that the king is meant to go to the bathhouse on his own. Not sure why. I would have thought the two were related, but it sounds like they're two separate things, but I'm not sure.
He'd go to his own bathhouse, private bathhouse.
Yeah.
Right, that's the point. No, that's exactly the point, right? And if for some reason that doesn't work, then everyone will have to move out of the bathhouse, right? And the same is true in my neighborhood with the Rav. When the rabbi comes, the rabbi goes on his own. He doesn't go with everybody else. It's not respectful to everyone to see the rabbi.
What if your Rebbe is in the mikvah?
You're not supposed to go in with your Rebbe.
So if I see Rav Berger in there, I can't go?
You're supposed to wait till he comes out.
Till he comes
I
out?
know, my son-in-law is very frum. My son-in-law won't go into the mikveh with me.
Wait. So if I see Rav Berger in there, I have to leave the mikvah and I have to pay another 10 shek to get back in?
Well, I didn't say that.
What should I do?
I don't know. Some say that it doesn't apply nowadays. I'll tell you why. Some say
it's real.
No, because that. No, not because your Rebbe is not a real Rebbe, because we don't really have bathhouses. In the times, 100 years ago, the bathhouse, people sat around, and it was like a sauna.
Like an onsen.
It was like a what?
Onsen, Japanese.
It was a whole to do. Nowadays, you get in, you have your shower, you dip in, you come out. You're not sitting around talking, sitting around everyone almost undressed. So that's unsuitable. But people like busy. You go in. It says in the halacha a child's not supposed to go with a parent to the bathhouse, right? And again, they say that it doesn't apply nowadays. The type of bathhouse we have.
Who says that?
That's why I've seen in halacha.
Okay.
Check it out. But it's definitely a brother-in-law and all sorts of people are not supposed to be in the bathhouse together at the same time. Some because of sexual reasons, some is just not respectful. Okay? All right. Shenema. Where does this idea come from? Saim tasim alecha melech. You shall surely place the king upon you. That pasuk implies the king must be always seen to be on top and not lower. And that's why conceptually it's not right that the king should be seen in the bathhouse, or when you see him in a what's the word? A lower position. where you don't see him in his full pride and his full greatness. So it has to be alecha, has to be upon you. For that reason, you don't watch him when he's having a haircut, or when he's naked, or when he's in the bathroom. Shetehei ein masay alecha, his dread, his awe should be upon you. You should always be in awe of the king.